Hey, this is Michelle Kapaska, and welcome to my Fearless Innovator podcast. Thank you for joining me today. My hope is to inspire, educate, and entertain you. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Fearless Innovator podcast. My name is Michelle Kapaska, and I'm your host. This week, I want to talk about failure is an option. Did you hear me? Failure is an option. For most of you that are sitting at a job, failure is not an option. Matter of fact, at a job, if you do something wrong, you typically get written up. Well, I'm an entrepreneur, and as an entrepreneur, I learn by failing. I think we can all relate to this next story, so I can get my point across. Most of us have learned how to ride a bicycle, right? Well, let me share this story. When I was probably 4 or 5, my mom and dad bought me a bicycle, and they took me out into the front yard and they told me to put my hands on the handlebars and put my feet on the pedals. And when they pushed me halfway across the yard, they were going to let me go. And then I was to pedal as fast as I could, and that would help me to keep upright. So my mom pushed me across the yard. She let go. And wouldn't you know it, the only tree that's in our yard, I run right into it. And of course, I wreck. And I get up and I'm stinking mad. And I holler back at mom that she pushed me and it was all her fault that she did it. And of course, it wasn't her fault. She was on the other side of the yard when this happened. And then she sat over there and laughed at me. Well, that didn't help matters any at all either. So what did I do? I said, well, do it again. Do it again. So they would push me across the yard until which time I was able to learn how to ride a bicycle. So riding a bicycle to me was not about learning. It was about all the failures I made to get there. I think you can understand my perspective. If you recall in a prior episode, I told you that I learned how to ride a motorcycle. Again, that was by failing. However, this day, now I'm 14, and he says, Shell, go get in the grain truck. Well, the grain truck is a big truck. I think it has 2 or 3 axles. It's a big dump truck. So in the back, it carries 300 bushel of corn. And he said, go get in the truck. I said, okay. So I got in the truck and I'm sitting in the driver's seat and he's at the door looking up at me. And he says, turn the key. Well, I turned the key and of course, nothing happened. And he said, okay, push in on the clutch and then turn the key. So I pushed in on the clutch and I turned the key and it started. And as soon as it started, it scared me and I popped the clutch. Well, that killed it. He said, okay, now look at the gear shift. And I looked down at the gear shift. I didn't know anything about how to change gears or anything, but this truck had 8 speeds and there were 4 high and 4 low. And Dad says, okay, well, put it in gear. Well, I don't really know what that means, but I saw a little picture on the handle and it was in the shape of an H. So there was a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, and in the middle was an N for neutral, I assumed, because I'd already learned that on my motorcycle, what neutral was. So he said, put it in gear. So then start it up. So I put my foot in on the clutch, put it in neutral, turn the key. Okay, it started. Then he says, okay, put it in gear. So I put it in gear and he goes, slowly release the clutch. So I slowly released the clutch and I started to move. Well, I popped it. And he says, okay, do that again, only do it a little slower so that you can feel the engine start to pull. And I kind of knew what that meant because I knew what that did on my motorcycle. And once I got that figured out, he said, all right, I'm going to get in the passenger seat. And I said, all right. So he gets in and he goes, okay, well, let's go down the road. Well, the road is Highway 44 and it's a busy highway. It's not a dirt road. It's a busy highway for Iowa. There's a lot of cars that go by. And that was kind of intimidating to go out on the highway, in this truck that I didn't even know how to drive. And so we get out there and then he teaches me, how to shift gears. And of course, the whole way down the road to grandma's house, I was trying to shift gears and I grinded them and I missed a gear and I didn't know how to do it. It took me several tries before I got it. So I got it. We got back to the house and he goes, okay, meet me in the field. Well, I knew what that meant. That meant he was going to go up there and combine corn. And my job was to get the truck loaded. So he gets in the combine and I follow him up to the field and I wait for him to motion to me to come over and I go out to the field with the truck And then he pours the corn into my truck and he says, okay, take it to Baird. Well, now keep in mind, he's assuming that I know how to get to Baird, which I did, by the way. But as a 14-year-old, that's a little intimidating. But so I took off and I learned something really right away. And that was that low gears and high gears were two different. When it was empty, it was a lot easier to get it into high gear than it was with a full load. So I get out of the field and I start making my way to Baird. And now there's hills in Iowa. So I could only go, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 miles an hour up these hills, but I was getting the hang of it after a time. So I would go up and down these hills and I finally make it to Baird. And at Baird, there was an elevator. Well, what's at the elevator? Boys. There were a bunch of boys up there, and I'm a girl. And so they were flabbergasted that there was a girl coming up in a grain truck. And so they helped me unload my load. And then I knew I was on a time schedule because my dad, the grain bin and the combine would get full and I needed to be back in time. So I started driving faster, to get back in time. Over time, I started learning how to go faster when I was driving with the full truck because I knew that I had to beat this time schedule. And these are things I also learned in project management. You have a time, you have a budget, you have a schedule. Well, I learned this all on the farm. So I made it back in time. Well, then lo and behold, I don't know, 2 or 3 days later, dad comes up and he tells me, "You're driving too fast." And I'm like, how does he know I'm driving too fast? Because he's in the field when I am driving this truck to the green bin. And it was on one of my trips that I realized I looked to the side of the road and I could see corn laying on the side of the road. And I realized that the money that dad was to earn was laying on the side of the road. And he must have followed behind because he knew that I would probably drive too fast, where the wind would kick up that corn in the back and it would knock it out of the truck. So then I realized, oh, shoot. Now I got to drive slow up to the grain bin, dump as fast as I can. I couldn't talk to the boys anymore. I had to go really fast back. So now I learned to maintain my schedule, drive slow, don't talk to the boys, dump really fast, drive back to the field really fast. And it was then that this is how I learned. Dad never told me what I had to figure it out on my own, what I had done wrong. And I learned, of course, because it upset my father. So these are short stories of failing. Now it's 2017 and I have just quit my job. My plan was to take a Robert Kiyosaki class about real estate where I learned how to evaluate properties and learned different things about real estate that I never knew. From 2000 to 2017, I had rental properties, but this time I wanted to learn more. So I took this class. At the end of the 6 months, I went to the real estate guy that I was working with. His name was Jim. And prior to this, we had been flipping houses together. Essentially, Jim did all the work. I supplied the money. But I learned from Jim along the way what he was doing in these flips. And I learned, different things that he taught me. Well, now I was in a position where I wanted to do this on my own because I'd just taken this class. And if you know anything about project management, there are phases that you go through. So there's a design phase, a build phase, an implement phase. So what I had just learned, I now needed to apply. So I went to Jim. I scheduled a meeting with Jim. And essentially, this is what I told him. I said, Jim, you have inspired me to be better. And I want to do it my first flip by myself and on my own. And this is what he said to me. Michelle, you are going to fail. Well, guess what? Michelle likes failure. This was no big shocker to me about failure. So I said, that's okay, Jim. I want to fail. He goes, but Michelle, you're going to make mistakes that I've already learned. I can help you. I can teach you. And I said, no, I'm going to do this myself. And what I mean by that, Jim, is I don't want you to help me find a property. I don't want your help with anything. I said, but if I have a question, would you mind if I call and ask? And he said, absolutely. And to this day, we're still friends. I didn't word it in a way where I said, I fire you, Jim. But essentially, it was just, I want to be able to learn my own. So off I went to go learn. And in the next episode, a couple down the road, I'm going to tell you about the flip that flopped, or was it? So I hope I've inspired you, educated you, and entertained you with my stories. If you want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me at fearlessinnovator.com/contact or fearlessinnovator.com/free book if you want to receive a free copy of my book called Why My JOB Quit Me. jumpstart your firing. And if you recall, a couple episodes ago, I told you that I was looking at an RV park. I've gone to the RV park and now I'm evaluating it. I'm looking at the numbers. So stay tuned. Thank you for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the show. If I can help you invest in your future, reach out to me at fearlessinnovator.com. Catch me later.